Hello, and welcome back to Let's Get Lit. In today's episode, we're going to be going over the Reeve's tale, which is counter to the Miller's tale. So, are you ready to see how these two friendly fire back and forth of each other with their stories and kind of what they have to say? Well, if you are, join me and let's see what the Reeve has to say in his tale, shall we? The Reeve starts his tale off with everyone laughing at the Miller. That is, except for the Reeve. The Reeve actually gets really frustrated with the Miller and is very angry at him. This causes the Reeve to go into a little mini sermon talking about how just because he's old and he was a carpenter doesn't mean he still doesn't remember everything in his youth. He muses about what it's like to get old and watch the world make fun of you as time goes on. The innkeeper stops the Reeve during his sermon and says just get on with it. He also thinks it's time for the Reeve to go ahead and give us his tale. The Reeve agrees and says that since the Miller wanted to start a fire, the best way to fight fire is with another fire. He tells the group that his tale is way better than the Miller's. The innkeeper is basically like, alright, shut up and just tell us. Now we get into the Reeve's tale. The Reeve starts his tale out by telling of a miller whose name was Simpkins, and how he was very good at milling and always prepared. However, he also tends to steal a little bit from every job he takes. He was also known around town as a very mean man. He had a wife, and his wife was actually the daughter of a priest. She was originally in a nunnery before being married, and after they were married, no one dared laugh or play or even really try to talk to the wife due to the fact that Simpkins was a very jealous husband. The Reeve goes on to say that the wife has an air about her because she does think that she's better than everyone else, simply because she had had a convent education. The Reeve also states that these two had a daughter and that she was a little older and well filled out. Also, they had a son, but he was only about a half-year old and still in the cradle. The Reeve goes on to say that it was not uncommon for millers to steal a little bit here and there from the jobs that they took. However, one day, when Cambridge brought a huge batch of barley and wheat to be milled, he stole 100 times more than what he usually does. When the warden tries to confront him about this, the miller boldly and proudly boasts that he did not steal anything. The warden gets very upset. The Reeve says two students from Cambridge asked the warden if they could go to the miller and try to catch him in the act of stealing. At first, the warden isn't too convinced, but the two students persuade him, and finally he agrees. We learn that the two students' names are John and Alan, and they prepare to head out towards the miller. John knew the way, so they didn't have to take a guide with them. When they get there, they tie up their horses to the posts and say hello to the miller. They have a small friendly conversation, and the boys think that they're going to outsmart this miller by watching him grind all the wheat and barley, so that way he can't steal any. However, the miller notices exactly what the two students are doing and decides to play this game back at them. When they're not looking, he slips out the back and unties their horses from the posts, and the horses run wild. Then he makes his way back in very slightly. He tells the boys that the horses have been let loose and whoever tied them up should be ashamed. Now John and Alan are running out trying to find the horses, and the miller's wife comes out and says that they have run wild and they need to go catch them. It takes these boys all day to finally get the horses back. In this time, the miller has been able to steal about half a bushel of their flour, and when he does, he tells his wife to take it and quickly make a cake so that way it cannot be found. When the boys finally come back, it's dark and they are soaking wet from the rain. Both had completely forgot about their plan, and both were embarrassed. They kindly asked the miller if they are able to spend the night, and said that they would be willing to pay him for his troubles. The miller sends his daughter out to town to buy some ale and bread and goose to roast. She comes back, and they all eat and drink and become merry. When it gets about midnight, he sets up a little place for both of them to sleep inside of his house, which really is a one-room house that's just a very large open space. So they're all very close together. Very soon, the miller and his wife both lay down to go to sleep. Both are very drunk from the ale, and it takes them no time to quickly fall asleep, and the two students can hear the very loud snoring and farts coming from the miller and his wife. Alan and John cannot sleep, however, due to all the noise and the smells. Alan thinks up a plan to get back at the miller, and he lets John know of what this plan is. He says that he's going to get back at the miller for stealing their grain, and is going to go over to the miller's daughter and force his way on her. John doesn't know if this is really such a good idea, because he's afraid the miller would beat the crap out of both of them, but Alan says the law states an eye for an eye. So he makes his way over to the daughter, and the narrator shifts his focus back over to John. While John is laying in bed, he thinks to himself how he's going to be made a fool of and mockery of when he gets back to the school. Because though the miller had stolen from them and made them a fool, Alan was able to sleep with the miller's daughter. John thought about it, and when the miller's wife gets up to use the bathroom, he devises a plan and moves the baby's cradle next to him. That way, As she's coming back, she gets into the wrong bed, and John ends up having his way with her. For the rest of the night, Alan's sleeping with the daughter and John is sleeping with the wife. When the third cock crows in the morning, Alan wakes up and goes over to the bed that he thought was John's. Again, John has switched the cradle, which leads Alan straight to the miller. Alan brags about sleeping with the daughter, which wakes the miller up, and the miller is incredibly angry and begins to beat the crap out of Alan. As the miller is punching Alan and blood is going everywhere, he falls back and trips, which wakes up John and the wife. Startled by all of this, John gets up and goes against the wall to try and find a staff or something to help him fight with. The wife finds the staff first, but because it's still so dark, she can't make out who is who the miller is versus the students. So when she believes she's about to hit the student, she in reality hits the miller right on top of his head. This gives the students a little time to get their belongings and head out the door. On their way out, the miller's daughter tells them everything that's happened the day before and where they can find the half bushel of stolen flour. They gather everything, get to their horses, make their way back to the school, and the miller is beaten up and also has made no profit from the work he's done the day before. The tale ends with the Reeve essentially saying that men who try to deceive will be deceived themselves. This is the end of the Reeve's tale, and essentially he tells the group that he has repaid the miller for his tale. This is the end of this episode. Please tune in next time as we go over the Cook's Tale. Have a great day. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and as always, stay lit.